reporting and investigating protests, women and information disorder, and how intertwined they are, the impact of COVID-19 on media, and media women and development. And as if that was not enough, Rona Meyer and Farah Warner gave their 50 cents on using solutions journalism approach in reporting issues bordering on women. You can testify that you left better than you came. Well, the journey to better continues again today. We will kickstart day 2 with the media lounge with women in the news. This is the point where women who have been there and done that in the media, like Ferrial, Haffajee, and Pamela Citoni, will share the stories, their journeys to empower, inspire, and help guide us in the right direction of our careers. Hold on, that is not all. After that, there will be breakout sessions where the following topics will be open for discussions. Infodemic and media, 2, that's a continuation. Gender sensitivity in the long-term perspective, sustainable journalism, effective science communication, how everyone can benefit. We also have speed networking session in between these breakout sessions. And that's not all. There will be 2 more breakout sessions, and that we focus on media representation, developing gender policies, breaking barriers for women journalists, inclusion, and fact-checking. These are pretty interesting subject matters. No one will be left to walk alone in this summit. Trust me, in order for you not to miss a thing, simply add the sessions you were interested in your calendar so you can get the notification when it is time. Remember to network with a purpose. Do not forget to spread the message on social media using hashtag AWIM21. That is hashtag AWIM21. You can also follow African women in media on all social media platforms, as the conversation does not end with this summit. It would be nice for you to know that there will be translations of the sessions in French and Arabic. This will ensure that everyone gets the best and the language barrier is eliminated. So I need to get out of your faces and get the ball rolling. Let's hear from the co-founder of African Women in Media, Dr. Yemisi Akimbobola, for opening remarks. You have the floor, Yemisi.
Thank you very much, Mercy. And thank you all for a successful launch of AWIM21 yesterday. What a start that was. Now, Zoom did almost let us down, and we apologize for any abrupt disruptions or change of links in last minute, but we're fully aware of why all that happened, and we're prepped up for a glitch-free day. The day yesterday started with the keynote panel, with Fatiswa Magupeni, Lina Atala, and Dr. Sarah Macharia, who set the tone for us to understand what we mean by building resilience for a future in media in Africa. We then entered the 3 parallel sessions, reporting and investigating protests, intertwined women and information disorder, and infodemic and the media. And after the break, we completed the day with a series of panels and workshops as well. So all the sessions were interactive and they were informative. And I really do deeply thank all our speakers and trainers for making that first day such a wonderful opening for our conference this year. Now, today was going to be another explosive day. As Mercy said, we're going to start with the media lounge with Women in News. And speaking would be Pamela Citoni and Ferrial Haffajee. But please do check your schedule for the rest of the day and remember to add those sessions to your agenda so we don't miss them. Now, yesterday, I announced that AWIM will be collaborating with the UNEP, so that's the UN Environmental Programme in Africa, for our Africa Environmental Journalism Programme, which sees us training and working with journalists across the continent to produce stories with the gendered angle on environmental issues in Africa. Well, today I'm pleased to announce another project, which is our Reporting Women's Rights Graduate Training Scheme, which is made possible through our partnership with the For Your Media Institute. So through the graduate program, we'll nurture journalism graduates in reporting on women's rights in Africa. So women's rights and media in Africa. So therefore, recent graduates and graduating women journalists, we have the opportunity to apply for what is a year-long stipend and mentorship supported program. And again, just like yesterday, we're looking for somebody to join our team to support us in leading this project as program officer and editor. So please click the link that's going to be provided in the chat or in the job section of the Wova app on how to apply to be part of this amazing graduate scheme. I'm really, really looking forward to it and nurturing new graduates on reporting on women's rights in the media. So thank you all once again for being here. I'm going to hand over to Mercy now so that we can get this show on the road. And I do wish you all a very brilliant day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yemisi, for that opening remark. So there's this powerful African proverb that was attributed to nobody. It says, listen to your elders' advice, not because they are always right, but because they have more experience of being wrong. That will introduce us to the first session of today, when we will hear Ferrial, Haffajee, and Pamela Citoni, two women who have seen it all. These women will crunch their decades of experience into 1 hour to empower, inspire, and help guide us in the right direction to succeed in our careers, despite barriers that are usually against us. So grab your mug of coffee, water, or juice, your notepads, and pens as we invite Susan Mccory to guide us through the session. Hello, Susan.
Good morning.
Good morning, Susan. We'd like to see your face as well as hear your voice.
Yes, I hope you can see my face.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session. As Women in News, we are very excited about this partnership with AWIM, and we really believe that the Media Lounge as a concept that we started a few months ago will enable women to come in and also find a safe space that they can share, a safe space that they can learn. And I wouldn't have put it better, Mercy. Yes, we do learn from those that have walked the walk. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Pamela Citoni. And Pamela is a renowned journalist with years and years of experience in the media industry. She hails from Kenya, and I want to hand over to her. She will also give a brief snippet of what she has done. She's currently with the Nation Media Group of Kenya. And Pamela, over to you.
Wow. Thank you. Can you guys hear me? It's asking me to unmute.
Yes, we can. Yes.
Thank you so much, Susan. And a big thank you to AWIM for having us here today. My name is Pamela Citoni, and I'm executive editor at Nation Media Group. But today is not really my day to speak about myself. Today is my day to introduce the Media Lounge officially to you guys, and also to have a fireside conversation with Ferrial, Haffajee. So I'll just go to that straight away. In terms of the Media Lounge, this is our unique mentorship initiative through which we hope to learn from each other's experiences, get inspired to grow our own careers. We have created it as a safe space, and particularly for women journalists, to speak about issues that affect them in a space that they can trust. And through this program, rising women journalists will be paired with the more experienced ones as elder sisters, you can call it, for one-on-one mentorship. For today, we have our session called Her Story, which we are hosting through this platform. This is the hallmark of our program. And here we get eminent women in media to share their journeys. And today, we are honored to have none other than Ferrial, Haffajee. Ferrial is a globally renowned award-winning journalist and media leader based in South Africa. Currently associate editor of the Daily Maverick, Ferrial has had an illustrious journey in journalism. And among the key positions she's held are senior editor at Financial Mail, editor-in-chief, Mail and Guardian, editor-in-chief, City Press, and editor-at-large, HuffPost. She serves on various international and local boards, among them the World Editors Forum. She's won several awards. It's impossible to even introduce Ferrial effectively here. She's just such a media great. Among the awards she has won, in 2014, she won the Committee for Protection of Journalists International Press Freedom Award, Editor of the Year, 2013, Phil Weber, NASPA's Leadership Award, 2012, and I could go on and on and on. But interestingly, as much as she's such a media giant, Ferrial is extremely private, and we are indeed really honored to have her here, finally, to hear her inspiring story in her own words. So thank you, Ferrial, and welcome. And
hello, Pamela.
Hi, Ferrial. I think it's only fair that I should start by asking you to tell us, who is Ferrial outside the newsroom?
So firstly, just to say thank you very much to Mercy and Missy, Susan. It's really an honor to be here today, and to have you, my Shiro, Pam, ask the questions. It's really a highlight for the end of the year. So outside the newsroom, I must say in the past 5 years, Pam, I've spent much more on cultivating that part of me. So right now I would say daughter and wife and friend and sister, and definitely a yogi. One of the ways that I've found to get through COVID anxiety is to up how much I do yoga. So that's very much, I would consider that I've given attention in these years to these other roles, because as you know, editing is a 24/7, 365 job where you don't have time to grow these other parts of yourself. I've just lost you for a moment.
Ferrial, where did you grow up, and what was your childhood like, and how did this influence your choice of career?
Can you hear me, Pam?
Yes.
Is that good? Okay. So I grew up in an area called Bosmont, which is about 15 minutes from where I live now. It was a so-called colored area because you know that the apartheid government divided people into 4 groups. It was really grotesque thinking, and this was a colored area for mixed race people. It was pretty much a ghetto. It was built as a buffer between black and white South Africa. And I guess that experience of growing up under apartheid really did completely impel my choice of career, my choice to become a journalist, because I understood it, and I still understand it, only as a way to change the world. So for me, it was less profession and more a way of making the world a better place, a form of activism.
Okay, thank you. And I mean, you've held such serious leadership positions in media, from Mail and Guardian to City Press, and now you're at Daily Maverick. Just tell us, at what point in your life did you decide to be a journalist? I know I asked this, but I'm just wondering at what age, at what point?
You know, I'm not sure about mums in Kenya, but mine, like most other mothers of Black children, she really wanted me to have a profession. She wanted me to be a lawyer or an accountant. But from a very young age, I thought that journalism was my way of changing the country. I'd always loved writing. So I started out, Pam, trying to study law. I went to university, I did some law courses. I was telling people that's what I would become. But the Weekly Mail at the time was a startup. We know startups very well today, but back then it was an unusual occurrence. Started by two fabulous editors, Anton Harber and Owen Manoyam. They took their retrenchment money and they put it into starting this newspaper. So it was a big dream of mine to go and work there. And at some point I ditched law when I was accepted onto their graduate program, because it offered me a chance to achieve my dream job. And really that was as far as my ambition stretched, which was to be really just to join the Weekly Mail and to extend my activism into journalism. I didn't have aspirations to be an editor, and I'll tell you why that is. Because I grew up right in when patriarchy still held us incredibly tightly, and the vision of an editor was always a male-shaped vision. I mean, when Mondli Makania, my friend and then editor, said to me, "Look, I'm leaving for another big newspaper. You must become the editor." My instinctive response was, "No, it can't be me, you know."
Interesting. I just have to keep on saying wow. So please don't tire of me saying wow.
No.
And I request all those on the call, if you have a question for Ferrial, just put it in the chat so that we'll pick them up as we go and when it comes to question time. So Ferrial, by the time you are in your 20s, you were already
Yes.
political correspondent and media editor at Mail and Guardian. And this was one of the most respected newspapers in South Africa and in the world at the time. How did you get there?
Pam, so choosing to be a political correspondent or political reporter was really just an expansion of wanting to see a change in apartheid. So it was covering the last years of the repression of the apartheid state, and then the negotiations of how a new government would be made. And I suppose the choice was more political than career aspirational. And because the milieu, and this is one of the things I wanted to point out today, the milieu and the context of the Weekly Mail was really, really what enabled women to think of themselves in different beats. At the other mass media, politics really was the preserve of white men and later on of Black and white men. It was really because of the nature of that newspaper that women could think of themselves as political correspondents. So I think the context is always vital to shaping the progress of women. That was my very early experience.
Wow, again. Ferrial, you know, I already sense that deep desire for justice as one of your values. What are your other values that have shaped your life?
Well, activism and democracy are, I know they may not be sexy, but they are shaping values for me, have always been. And I suppose that's why I remain a journalist today, is that I want to see what becomes of this country that we saw being taken from repression and apartheid to democracy. Can we sustain a working, modern African democracy? I enjoy having a seat that enables me to tell that story. So for me, very much justice and democracy, and then obviously an end to patriarchy. I also worked at the Interpress service with Pat Made, who you may know. She's with UN Women now. She was a shaping force in my life, along with Colleen Lomona, who taught me the gendered language of the media and how to be a force for change in that. So I would say that that's my other shaping value. Huh?
Wow. And Ferrial, in your view, what goes into making a great journalist like yourself?
It's interesting that your description of me doesn't chime with how I see myself, and that's possibly a little bit of imposter syndrome, which we can speak about later. I still feel like I'm on the journey to being made into what I'm meant to be. But I think that the founding quality I found has always helped me is curiosity, curiosity about the world and humility. That's why I'm far more comfortable reporting than I am opining or doing opinions, although I learned to do that later. I think it's an absolute honor that journalists are given the opportunity to walk in people's worlds, because that's what they open up to us. They say, come on in, hear my story, tell my story. And I still find that a really, really great honor of our craft. So just before the November election, I wrote a lot about Johannesburg, which is the city where I live. And really, it's just collapsing under the weight of bad governance. But ahead of that story, I went to write about homeless people who live in a graveyard. I went back to where I grew up to see how much it's changed or how much it hasn't changed in the democratic years. And once again, I was really humbled by how people let you in and they tell you your stories. And for me, that's the biggest, I think curiosity and humility would be, I think, the biggest characteristics, which I certainly have looked for in young journalists as I was in a position to employ them.
Interesting. And you know, you mentioned something really important about the kind of trust people put in journalists, and just how do you feel about the kind of responsibility then this imposes on you as a journalist?
You know, it's a great weight of responsibility. You know, we live in a time of a massive trust deficit in the mass media. There are manifold reasons which Women in News, the World Association of Newspapers, really looks at very often. What has led to this deficit? Our newsrooms are much, much smaller. We cannot deploy people nationally. Blanketed on top of that, we have this weight of social media, which is both marvelously liberating to be able to quickly tell your stories and opinions on it. But obviously what we've seen trailing in its wake is the misinformation pandemic, the misinfodemic, which was really the twin stream of COVID. Is in our country, I don't know about in yours, we're battling massive disinformation on vaccines, which is why our numbers are still relatively low at 40% when we need them to be at 80% to fight off this Omicron virus, which was first identified in South Africa just 2 weeks ago.
All right. And you've spoken a lot about some of the stories that you've worked on, but I'm just wondering, in your very long political reporting and writing career, what is the story you're most proud of?
Well, I suppose, Pam, it may be a little bit obvious to say this, but when I was really young, I was chosen to be on the panel, the first major televised panel with Nelson Mandela and his late opponent, F.W. de Klerk, as they were switching roles. And that was a real with John Simpson and with some South African journalists, Tim Modise and Freek Robinson. I was the only woman then, and wow, it was really, it still counts as a massive highlight for me. Not that I asked a brilliant question, Pam. When I look back now at that video, sometimes I can cringe. I asked him such an over-rehearsed, very political, very correct questions, when in fact what I wanted to ask, what I should have asked now is warm questions about what was it like to be imprisoned for 27 years? Are you excited to lead this country? I would have asked very different questions, but that remains a great honor. Reporting all the democratic elections since then has been probably the highlight for me. Huh?
Is anyone else clapping with me?
Thank you.
And you know, you won't get any of that anywhere online. I've researched you, and So it's true that humility is really, really your trait. But well done, well done, well done, well done.
Thank you, Pam.
Yeah. Now, I'm just thinking, these positions that you've held, especially editor-in-chief positions, these have come with major challenges too. So what would you say was your most difficult moment in your career?
There've been many, and I hope I share the lessons rather than the pain with you. So at the Mail and Guardian, because it was investigative, people kept taking us to court to try and gag us. So this was a tiny newspaper which ran from week to week. It didn't really have a buffer of cash, didn't have a massive legal budget. And we were gagged about 8 times in the course of my editorship. Each of those would cost R1,000,000, which we can work out into dollars later. And when you hold the future or the survival of your platform in your hands, but on the other hand, you have to fight off these gagging efforts. Each of those was quite frightening because you're taking things to the precipice. I do think there were important battles to fight. But perhaps the two that I'd share closely with you is I'm Muslim. And at one point, we published one of the cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. It was a long time ago, before social media. They were incendiary cartoons which caused fires around the world, from Bangladesh to Denmark to everywhere. And in South Africa, because we had published that, even though my purpose wasn't to harm the Muslim community, but to show what was causing all this pain around the world, people got so angry with me. You know, my mom was receiving calls about this. My family was questioning my motives for doing so. And there were literally thousands of messages against me. People in mosque were praying against me. That was certainly one of the toughest moments where your religion is up against your commitment to free expression, and the clash. That's where perhaps I learned the most, that freedom of expression, when you exercise it, is not always going to make you popular. And that's something I've learned again and again and again. You're never going to stand up for it on easy things. You're going to have to stand up for it on really difficult things. But for me, that was the toughest one, Pam.
Wow, that is tough. And I was going to bring up this later, but the lessons are great, and it's something that many journalists, and particularly the women journalists, are struggling with right now. Perhaps not at that really, really large global level, but
Yes.
we do get these threats, these harassments, particularly on social media. So what would you tell our colleagues, and particularly the younger ones here? How do you deal with this?
No, I've read a lot about how this has become the single biggest threat facing women journalists. And it's a very specific kind of online violence directed at women journalists. I'm not saying that all our colleagues do not face this, but with women, it's always highly sexualized. It's very violent. And I think its purpose, as far as my experience in South Africa, watching colleagues who face this, it is to get you out of the profession. I've seen it, experienced it, and watched it on colleagues. It's a kind of hounding, a way of pushing you out because you're too big for your shoes, you have too much voice. And really, it would be easier if you weren't telling these stories. And for me, I don't know about your governments, but sometimes the police here don't even have smartphones. So trying to get them to investigate forensically and digitally where these threats are coming from is almost impossible. And that's why I think the solution does lie, Pam, with the platforms. And why I think that the research done by ONE IFRA, by the ICFJ, by Julie Posetti, Maria Ressa. These are the things that are beginning to make us safer online. I'm not sure about you all, but I find now that on Twitter, you can bubble wrap yourself. You can determine who responds to you. You can mute conversations, mute people more easily. And that only comes about because you have this global digital army of the good, of women mostly, who have stood up for other women, done this research, that it begins to make us safer. Because I do think that kind of online hounding is a way of getting us out. Just as we've come to these beats that are political, investigative, and hard news, people want to marginalize us back into what used to be called the soft beats, the places where women must know their space and their place.
Thank you for that and for the advice. And just for everybody, I hope you're all aware that Maria Ressa has been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for her work and her activism. And she's resisted all this harassment. So it's really a noble reward, and a noble reward for journalism too. We should be celebrating that.
I think she gets that prize today. Hey,
yeah, she
Pam,
does.
it's today, right? Yeah. So it's really massive for journalists and women journalists. Hey?
We all need to celebrate as journalists, and particularly as women. So, Ferrial, what would you say are the major pillars that have supported you in your work as you've scaled this leadership journey?
So, Pam, undoubtedly, it's fellow women editors and journalists. From the Weekly Mail, where I worked, women encourage you, push you to do stories you don't think you can. It's been enlightened leaders like Trevor Ngube of Zimbabwe, who appointed me editor of the Mail and Guardian. So very much it is people who see the value in one and who pull you up. And that's why I think it's vital that we then extend a hand to women who want to be editors or who want to be journalists to in turn pull us up. And for me, it's always been that you really must work against the harsh stereotypes that women fight each other, that they pull each other down, that we compete territorially with each other. That hasn't been my experience. I've always come from places of empowerment and hopefully have created similar spaces. It hasn't always been easy, which I'm happy to share with you. You, as an editor, you need to make hard choices. You work on terrifying deadlines. You have to sometimes meet revenue targets. And sometimes I haven't been as nurturing and as kind as I would have wanted to be. But my experience has been of kindness and of circles of empowerment, which have helped me get to where I wanted to be.
Thank you. Ferrial, I'm getting lots of accolades in the chat, and basically people just saying congratulations, congratulations. And colleagues, I want to see more questions so that if I leave out anything, we can get Ferrial to, we can unmask her a little more. She's really a person. So, Ferrial, back to professionalism. There's somebody speaking. So, Ferrial, political reporting, business reporting, investigative reporting, opinion writing, these are usually considered the most respected areas of journalism, and yet not so many women. How did you break into this very difficult form of journalism, and what advice would you give to our colleagues on the platform right now?
So Pam, there's never anywhere that I thought I couldn't write about. So when I got into a newsroom as a young reporter, as a beat reporter, I really would go to the editors of those sections, be it investigations or the arts or politics, wherever I was interested, and I would pitch them stories. I would really work hard to read almost everything I could, call up people, get stories, and then I would pitch them diaries, even if it was off my beat. And most people, in my experience, accepted that. They saw that, yes, a young person's very keen to work, she's very keen to learn new things. But I suppose the lesson was that not to wait, was to go to them and offer them stories, to write to editors who I wanted to freelance with, and to learn that rejection is just part of life. It's not it's not, it shouldn't be an existential blow. It's going to happen. But I find that 7 out of 10 people would accept your offers, or your being curious, or your intention to learn something new. And I hope that people in newsrooms have found that kind of openness, that there isn't a territorial impetus in newsrooms that means that you must know your place, you can only stay in your lane. You can actually go out of it and make offers outside of your beat. But there has to be a leadership framework which encourages that.
I like that. You have to try. You have to give it a try. You have to go for it. You cannot just sit back and expect to be asked. But also the lesson about reading a lot. Sometimes expect to write, and if you're not very well informed, then you can't really do a proper piece. And learning that rejection is just part of life. So those are good lessons to take away. I have a question from Jen Godia, and she's asking, what kind of support did the men in your life give you? And what are the challenges you faced from colleagues? Did you experience sexual harassment at all? Those are questions that
Thank you.
Want to.
Thank you, Jane. So I don't think there's any one experience. Like I've said, it was Trevor Ngube, the Zimbabwean publisher and media entrepreneur, who gave me my first break. It was Mondli Makanya who let me edit guest editions of the Mail and Guardian, which enabled me to learn new things. So really very empowering instincts from male colleagues, and that's been my experience. You know, when I see how much women report sexual harassment, I recognize that at the time, of course it happened, especially in covering politics. You know, I was a very, I hope, industrious young reporter, so I'll go meet lots of people. But numerously now do I think back to the times when men would say, come with me to my hotel room, and you had to say, no, absolutely not, my mother will kill me. Or otherwise, like, you're dropping somebody and they say, no, let's go to your hotel. This was when you were covering stories out of town. So that was a rote experience. And I think the casting couch, where women have to be asked to sleep with somebody for a job or to get a story, is still such a sad part of our everyday. But what's important now is that there are many, many, many more of us in leadership positions. And I think what's happened, Jane, is women have begun to study this and speak out about it. I don't know about other countries, but in South Africa, the National Editors Forum had to put out a statement and begin an investigation when numerous young women, especially in the political beat, were coming forward and saying that this is still how it goes. The harassment they face is continuous. And I think if there's work we still have to do, is collating these experiences and amplifying them, because we now have social media where you can speak about this stuff much more than we could have done before.
True. And you know, now that you mentioned some of those experiences, of course, we experienced them and we didn't know that it was called sexual harassment at the time. We just brushed them off and thought that it's normal for men to behave like that. So At least now
It didn't have a name and a practice then, hey, Pam?
Yeah, so at least now we know what to call it, and we can also call it out. My next question is, how did you break onto the international stage? I mean, from a South African journalist to a globally recognized journalist?
Pam, I'll share with you the story. You know, the Mail and Guardian sent me to a Global Editors Forum meeting, a World Editors Forum meeting in Turkey, I think, for the first time. And I was aghast when I got there that panel after panel after panel was just white men and white men and white men. And I came from a country where non-sexism and non-racialism is written into the constitution. So diversity of the construction of how you tell people about the world, how you narrate or decode the world was written into our constitution, and we were busy exercising those kind of freedoms. So yeah, I get to a World Editors Forum function and it's unbelievable. We now call them manels, but it was all white men panels. I was aghast. So afterwards I went to the organizer and I said to him, excuse me, but what is this? Are there absolutely no women editors in the world? I see them in the audience. Why aren't they on the panels? And he was really irritated with me for daring to come and ask him such a question. But it just struck me as unjust, you know. And because I suppose I had dared go to him and question how this had happened, later on he wrote to me and asked me to get on the board, to come on the board. And I suppose because he realized that I did have a kind of point about diversity and stuff. So that's how that happened. I guess it was having a big mouth and speaking out about something that just felt unequal and unjust to me. And then from there, I suppose I got invited to different places and also had the joy of traveling a lot, Pam, which wasn't something open to me as a young person. So I've really enjoyed that. Huh?
All right, and so I'll go to some of the questions in the chat, just so
There's
that
some great questions. Yeah.
it's not only my voice coming through, but also voices of our colleagues who are listening in and watching you and learning from you. So Susan Mccory asks, with such a pressure job, how do you balance other responsibilities? And I'll I'll merge my own question to ask, have you had to make sacrifices as you pursued your career as a journalist?
Yeah, so thank you for asking that, Pam. When you sent me the questions last night, I thought, wow, that's it. It made me think a little bit because, yes, you know, I look back on it. I made huge sacrifices. I don't have children of my own, although I would have loved to have them. And I do think now, looking back, I wasn't in the right relationship, but it was also simply because I didn't know how to make that balance, and I probably chose one over the other. And I think I told you that a few years ago I decided to step down as an editor-in-chief. Why was that? Because one of the exercises I did was this wheel of life, where you look at all the roles that are important to you. And for me, that was to find a partner, to be a daughter, to be a sister, to be a friend. And all those parts of my life were in deficit. So I thought something has to give here. The balance simply was not there. So to be honest, maybe I wasn't wise enough, but I found that balance impossible to strike. Actually, there was just too much going on. When I edited a Sunday newspaper, you'd get off press at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. And by Sunday morning, everybody's calling you about where's their paper. It was still in the days of analog newspaper delivery. So I'm sure you know this well. Where's my newspaper? Not here, not at the shop, hasn't arrived, etc. So it was really a 7-day job. And And if I had a chance to replay it, I would be more insistent about those balances, about knowing what my boundaries and my limits were, and for asking for more assistance. And perhaps not to be such an A-type personality, hey? To realize that it was okay to take some downtime. Hey?
Wow, that is so deep, and that moment of reflection and just making that really big decision to step down for yourself.
Yes, I did.
It's quite deep and a courageous move. I guess there's really no such thing as a perfect balance for all of us, but and we always have to sacrifice. One thing suffers and another one gets through. It's really our story for most of us. So there's another question from Tamala Chira, and she asks, what is your driving force as a leader that remains consistently solid in your journey?
So that's a lovely question. Thank you very much. I've had the opportunity to go and live in other places. I have a mom I look after. She's 91, so that it anchors me. But I also, when I went to work at Bloomberg for a short while, I also realized that I'm very invested in what happens with our country and with our democracy. And if I can have a role in influencing that direction, then I'd like to keep that. So I guess that's been my golden thread, Pam, is I quite want to see what we do in South Africa. Can we build this post-colonial, modern African democracy? What does it look like? Can we make our constitution real and living for people? And also, I really love writing. So the thing I'm focused on now is creative nonfiction as a form of literature, and I'm really trying to learn that now. If I may, I want to go back to someone who said they met me at the CNN African Journalist of the Year Awards, and what has happened to those awards? I must tell you, it's one of my great sadnesses that those were stopped, because there were books done about how Maggie, who started it at CNN, the impact that those awards had on the lives of people were quite phenomenal. Be it that they went on to become media owners, that they reached the heights of their journalism potential. I was really sad when those were shut down. But the lesson I think we have here is that those awards started in Ghana. They were started by a young entrepreneur in Ghana and then taken over by CNN. And I'm sure that we should be able to, if we put our heads together, start something like that on our continent. I'm sure that CNN would give us the IP to run those. And I think why they worked is they were genuinely Pan-African. I think the prizes were good, but also the exposure they gave to people was wonderful. And surely we could start doing that. We can restart those awards, because the BBC tried something and then dropped it. And maybe now is the time, Pam, for a homegrown initiative that has the same kind of impetus as that had. Huh?
I agree with you 100%. And maybe we really shouldn't wait for the global media houses to be running.
No.
To do our own African award.
I really think we can do it from, and technology allows you to do it so much more easily now. Huh?
True. So now I have another question. This is from Brenda Kinya. She says, I am currently a student in my final year. I would like Ferrial to mention, in hindsight, what is something she wishes she knew or was told as she got into the newsroom?
Thank you for a lovely question. I think that if I'd written a letter to that younger myself, I would say trust yourself more, and actually don't know your place, because I think the world tells us, know your place. That's your spot. That's where you stay, and wait until things are given to you. Is actually don't know your place. Be the woman who speaks out. Be who you want to go, and have more confidence. Because the thing I've learned, Pam, is that there's an almost innate confidence in people of privilege. And when you are not born with privilege, you don't have that. So I would say grab it. You know more and you are more than you think you are. And like Mercy is saying, absolutely trust yourself and stake your claim to go where you want to go. That would be my advice to the younger person. Huh?
Wow. Again, really deep. And I'm just wondering for myself, I wish journalism came always with the warning that it's addictive. What do you think?
It's completely addictive, Pam. I guess we could go elsewhere, maybe work a little less, earn a lot more. But I like being in the public square. I enjoy our role as acting in and for a public interest. And sometimes I can forget that is still what allows us to enter people's lives. They give us the honor and the space to get into their lives. We act in a public interest. And I guess for me is that is what keeps me doing what I do. Huh?
Yeah, it's just crazy. So I have a question from Doreen Magak, and she asks, how long did you take to rise to where you are? And at some point when you are rising, what was the reaction of your bosses and some of the women around you?
No, Doreen, I saw that question, and I must say that because of the context, perhaps I've chosen them, Pam, or perhaps they've come to me, is they have been empowering contexts, and that's been vital in allowing me to grow and to get where you want to go. The place where I didn't find inspiring, and that's why I think the SABC is really lucky to have Patiswa Magopeni, who was on this webinar for a bit, is the SABC. That's the biggest, most powerful public broadcast. It wasn't a happy place. It wasn't an empowering place and space. And so I got out of there as soon as I could. I think as women leaders now, we have to create those places where people do feel that they can grow. So my experience, Doreen, has always been of people being excited. And then once I was the editor of really wanting to achieve great projects, great impacts. I haven't, where I've felt that there's an instinct of pull her down. When I was an editor, I made sure that I tried to undercut that in newsrooms. But where I have experienced it, I'll move out of that space because it's depleting. It depletes your emotional and other resources.
So, Ferrial, there's an avalanche of questions in the chat,
yes.
But let me just ask my final question and then I'll
Sure.
go to questions in the chat. And my final question is, Ferrial, there's nothing you haven't achieved in journalism. And I'm just curious, where are you going to next?
So, Pam, thank you for asking that question. I suppose that when I stepped down as City Press editor-in-chief, I did want to I wanted to find someone to love again because I was divorced once and it was really a horrible experience. So I got married again. And to be honest, I wanted to focus on that. And right now I'm learning new things. So very coolly at the Daily Maverick, I went on an innovation course. Design thinking, and I would recommend, there's lots of these courses and I'm happy to try and get you some details to learn how to design products for new media. So these can be for startups, they can be for where you're working. It can be a newsletter, it can be a podcast, it can be a process, it can be a product. And I've absolutely loved learning this innovation in media, which is what I'm doing now. And I also work as the engagement editor of the Daily Maverick. So engagement, building up new audiences, working out where your future audience lies. These are the things I'm doing now, and I'm really loving it. And I find lots of tools, lots of courses, mostly online, that's open to us. And for me, it's been a whole new world. So that's what I'm doing, Pam. I'm also writing a book, and really trying to think very deeply about creative nonfiction as a form of literature, which I'd like to do. And then thank God you didn't ask me how many degrees I have, because only one. So I do want to go and do my master's, because I'm very inspired by Dr. Yemisi to go and do a PhD sometime. And by all of you whom I know, because I've seen your bios very often, you have many degrees, you keep learning, and that's been very, very inspiring to me. So I'm going to hopefully go and do that, Pam.
Wow, big plans, and I want to wish you all the best in all those
Thank
plans.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I see the clock is just ticking away. Let me ask as many questions as I can, and I should probably lump them. So one is Ferial in simple language. Are you telling us it's time for us to report on women harassment stories and leadership? That's one. I think it's a comment.
I definitely think so, hey, because when I was a judge on the CNN Awards, people would tell us this all the time, Pam. And we have to find a safe way, create whistleblower platforms where women journalists can go tell these stories. Hey?
And then another question. What significant change have you noticed in young women journalists today compared to when you were young, as a young woman journalist?
Wow, I just love it. They are everything I wanted to be growing up, man. Confidence, staking a claim, doing the biggest beats, massive voices, and their knowledge of technology to be able to create a podcast, do a video, write a bit of text. Amazing. I am so inspired by that generation who I see coming up, Pam. It's wonderful to get to know them and also to watch their work, okay? Not only here but across the continent. Okay?
Great. And Sumaya asks, producing good pieces requires stable financial support. Have you been receiving grants for any of your stories?
No, I do want to talk about this a bit. Pam, when I was doing the CNN Awards, wow, I learned a thing or two, hey, about the absolute vulnerabilities of African journalists who were being forced into brown envelope journalism, who were still only largely working as freelancers. And I think the new world of philanthropic or non-profit media, something like the SA Media Innovation Program, it really does offer a measure of stability and also the ability to find grants and to go out and do stories. So the International Women's Media Foundation, the SA Media Innovation Program, the Global Investigative Journalism Network, Reuters, etc., they do offer us many, many more ways of raising some money to go and do stories. But I still think the big gap, Pam, is for, like the colleague asked, is what's the stability? So I guess because I'm older, I have some savings. I haven't needed to grant fund, but what I have done, Pam, is I had a number of roles. I have the Daily Maverick, and then I would do a couple of other things to put together in order to achieve an income, which still isn't what you'd make as an editor, but it does give me peace of mind. And I suppose that's what I'm learning. That's what I try to tell people who ask me, is that very much journalism will be about putting together a number of gigs. But then, like somebody says, you have to find that thing that you're good at. You have to choose a specialization and get very, very good at it. And at the moment, the one that I would choose is health, epidemiology, vaccinology, because this story is going to be with us for a very long time.
Thank you. And I think I'll ask the last question because we really, really are now have to wind up. First of all, I hope you'll have time to read all the comments because most of them are thank yous and complimentaries and people just saying how much they're learning from you. And the last question is, what mistakes have you made in your career, and what have you learned from that? And
Thank you, Pam. That's a tough question, but you have to. So firstly, Stella, I just want to answer your question. Stella asked, when one is strong, focused individual cannot be tied down in their work, they are readily labeled or dismissed as feminists. Would that bother you? No, not at all. I've always been an extremely proud feminist. And that comes from the Interpress service. It comes from working with Rosemary Okello, with Pat Made, with Colleen Lomona. These are women who teach you to be quite fine in being labeled that way because it is core to your beliefs. So no, I'm not. So Pam, I've made many, many mistakes. Retrospectively, there was some of the swashbuckling me that perhaps wasn't as considered enough in what you publish and what you don't publish. It was probably unwise of me to make certain career moves like the SABC, but cumulatively, what I have learned from all of those is that I often think in my country, I don't know about in yours, we still punish failure and trying, rather than seeing them as essential to the journey. So it was at Media 24 where I worked, because Media 24 owns News 24 and it owns Naspers, it owns Tencent, where they inculcate the idea of failing and failing fast. And I have found that enormously liberating to no longer see those things as mistakes are important in a growth path. It's what you do with them and how quickly you recover from them that counts. Because I think fear of failure is another, it can hold you back. At the moment, South Africa's prosecution rate is very, very low. I think because our chief prosecutor, Shamila Batoy, is scared of failing. And in fact, you cannot make perfection the enemy of the good, because then you will keep trying to be perfect rather than iterating and learning new things. Huh?
Thank you, Ferrial. And colleagues, if I didn't get to ask your question, I am really, really sorry. But I think it's been a great learning moment, and I want to thank you all. And I want to thank such an engaging session, Ferrial. I have learned a lot, and I could sit here all day and just listen to you. So please don't just write fiction, but write your book as well, because we want to know more about you and your career. And
I loved your questions and chatting to you, Pam. You're my hero. Hey?
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll hand this back to Mercy. Thank you very much, everybody. Please stay on the call.
Oh my word. Oh my word. Have you seen or heard about such a brutal honesty? I mean, everything. I mean, she practically covered everything we women in the media, be you in print, be you in broadcast, be you in new media, we face these issues on a daily basis. And Ferrial was just honest. She said it as it is, and we can all feel the impacts. Thank you so, so much, Ferrial Haffajee, for your, I mean, I don't know, it's awesome. Then Pamela Citoni, you were just an awesome, I don't know, I really don't know what to say at this point in time. You were awesome with your questions, with the way you guided us from the beginning of our career down to where it is right now. I appreciate both of you for this wonderful session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
She said, do not let perfection be the enemy of good. I think that's absolutely awesome. So I want every one of us right now to drop our thank yous on the chat box. I'm saying thank you right now. To drop our thank yous on the chat box, and also drop quotes that we can use to put on social media. Whatever you think you heard that really inspired you, go ahead and drop it on the chat box and let other people learn from it as well. Take this news to social media. I mean, social media should be buzzing right now from the comments that we heard right now. And Ferrial, we'll be looking forward to reading your book.
Thank you.
Looking forward to reading your book. I mean, I can't imagine how many pages it would be, but well, let's keep our fingers crossed until then. Amazing story. Mwazi said, amazing insight. We should not fear failure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay. I think it is time for us to move to the next item on the agenda, which would be the breakout session. I mean, we just, as much as possible, tried to more like give you a, do you call it an icing on the cake or something of what is going on here today. We are going into specific agenda that we have for today, which is the breakout session. So I just quickly read out what we have right here on our schedule, so you can go for the one that that you're really very interested in. Remember what Ferrial said, you have to pick a specific area of concentration and be so good at it. So now it's time for you to pick a specific area of focus, and it's right here on the agenda. So we'll be breaking out into session, and for the first breakout session, we'll be taking a look at infodemic and the media. So it's a continuation of what was done yesterday. So if it was awesome yesterday, or you missed it yesterday and you'd like to be a part of it, go ahead. Infodemic and the media 2 is there. We also have gender sensitivity in the long-term perspective, sustainable journalism. And we also have effective science communication, how everyone can benefit. Amazing and fantastic array of panelists that will be doing justice to the subject matter. AWIM does not joke with the kind of people they bring to talk about the issue. They bring people that have been there, done that, practiced, and are willing to even share their stories. So the links and the details to the sessions have been sent to all our emails. And I think they are being posted right now on the chat box here. All right, they are being posted on the chat box right here. So you can either check your email or quickly click on the chat box to see which of the breakout session that you want to be a part of. And I advise that make friends, and that's why the speed networking session available on Woover is very important. Make friends so that if you miss a particular session that you really are interested in, probably you have 2 or 3 you want to attend and you can't. Of course, you're one person, you can only attend one Zoom meeting at a time. Make friends with people so you can share notes afterwards. Oh, did you attend this session? Oh, this was what I attended. You can share notes afterwards so you don't get to miss anything. There's a lot of thank you. So Ferrial, you might want to check out the chat box. Lots of thank you for that particular session. So I think this is time where I'd say thank you so much for bearing to see me in your face with my head here. And I think it's time we move on to our next session. So you can as well visit the agenda on Woover and click on the link. It's going to take you directly to the room where you are supposed to be. Do not forget that important information are being posted on the chat box. Okay, important information, links, and answers to some questions have been posted on the chat box. Please do visit the chat box quickly before you leave so that you can find out if any of the links are related to what you talk about, so you don't get to miss anything there. So, ladies, African Queen. Oh, someone is speaking. Is that Yemisi?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you to Ferrial and Pamela. What an amazing and explosive interview. Social media has been buzzing. So I'm really grateful for all your insights and your honesty. And, it's just so great to share your story. So thank you so much. And, fun fact, I met Ferrial at the last CNN African Awards ceremony in Johannesburg way back in 2016. So, and just like she said, that was a great platform for exposure. So thank you all very much, everybody. Check out the links that are in the chats and do join us for the rest of the day. So take care. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.